Okay, this first one is a calculator problem. So the first 3 problems on the test are going to be calculator. I believe you only have to type in one function, so be careful of that. So you only have to type it in once. And then you're going to have to find probably the zeros, the max, and the min. And it's going to be timed. You're not going to have more than 10 minutes to do that. It'll cut it off. Okay, so we're going to go to our calculator. And you're going to type this in. So I'm typing in x to the 4th. Minus 2x cubed minus 31x squared. Oops, somehow I got extra in there. Nope, not that. And then plus 32x, and then plus 240. Hit enter. And then it says it wants us to find the zeros. It is a 4th degree, so we'd have to find 4 zeros. So to do that, you go to menu, analyze graph, 0. And then you go to the left of it and the right of it, and there's one of our zeros. I believe you only have to type in the x values on the test. So analyze graph, 0, to the left, to the right. Lost it completely. And then menu, analyze graph, 0, to the left, to the right. Menu, analyze graph, 0, left, to the right. And grab that other one more time. All right, so those would be the zeros. And again, on the test, you're just going to type in the x values, and you're not even going to write any work down on paper. You're typing this whole thing in online. All right, so there's the zeros on that one. Then the next 2, if you look at 2 and 3, they're the same problem. Okay, one is asking us for our maxes and one is asking us for our mins. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to do that one on the calculator as well. So I'm going to clear what I've done, doc B. And we're going to type in x to the 5th, plus x cubed, minus 4x, and hit enter. All right, and this time it was asking us for the maxes and the mins. So I'm going to start with, it asked for the max first. So I'm going to do menu, analyze graph, and I'm going to choose maximum. I go to the left of it. Don't know why that's popping up. I go to the left of it, and I wait until it stops saying maximum. Don't know what's going on with my computer here. All right, so that's the number I'd write in, and I'm supposed to go 3 decimal places. So you'd write in negative 0.802, 2.360. So that would be what you get for the max value. I'm going to put that on my max screen here. And you need both the x and the y value on that one. This one is asking us for the minimum, so now I'm going to go calculate that. You don't have to delete the point. I'm going to just so I just have the minimum when I paste it over. This thing's acting dumb. Let me just get rid of that. All right, so the minimum, I go menu, analyze graph, minimum, I go to the left of it. When it stops moving, instead it just says minimum, I stop there. And I would type in 0.802, negative 2.306. Again, 3 decimal places, and you're supposed to round them correctly. These ones didn't round, but the ones on the test may. Okay. 4. All right, so write the quadratic function in standard. Your book calls it standard, but I call it vertex form. You're going to have to complete the square. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write it on my paper as a y equals instead of an f of x equals. You do have a leading coefficient. What do we need to do with the leading coefficient? Divide everything by it. Good. So we've got negative y equals x squared plus 4x minus 1. All right, what are we going to do with this negative 1? Add it to the other side. So we're going to add it over. I'm going to add in my plus blanks at this point. All right. I have, I set up my cheating factoring. What am I supposed to do with this 4? Divide it by 2. What do we get? 2. Square it, we get 4 to both sides. All right, so we've got negative 1 plus 5. I've got to take this and move it to the other side. How do we move it back to the other side? What do we do? Subtract it. And then I have to take that negative, and this is the weird part that we usually mess up on. We take that negative and divide by it. So your final answer, I'm going to write it up here. This negative floats in front. So negative x plus 2 squared, and then this double negative goes positive. You do not put the negative into the parentheses for that lead negative, because that tells us it's upside down, right? All right. Who else did we skip here? Austin, we skipped you, right? Okay, which one do you want to see? 23? All right, we're going to go ahead and look at number 5. So to do number 5, all they want us to do is the remainder. And to do the remainder, we can use synthetic division. It's not going to be, it doesn't tell us whether we have to do synthetic or not. So, I remember when it's inside parentheses, we change that sign, so it's going to be 3. It looks like I'm missing a squared term, so I've got 4, 0, 2, negative 1. I'm going to drop the 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 0 plus 12 is 12. 3 times 12 is 36. 2 plus 36 is 38. 3 times 38, 8 is 114. Negative 1 plus 114 is 113. So the remainder we would put down would be 113. Supposed to choose all that apply. What you need to look for on the test is which of the following are not possible rational zeros. Okay, so on our, we're going to do possibles. On the test, it's the opposite. So look for the opposite. Okay, so my p's come from which number up there? The last number. So what times what is 9?
3 and 9.
Yep, 193. Technically all plus minus, right? I'm not going to be looking at your plus minuses on this. All right, so you know that they're all plus minus. Whether you write them or not is up to you. All right, the q's are coming from the 12. So I have 1 and 12. What else?
2 and 6.
And
4.
3 and 4. And it's going to be one that has a bunch of numbers. I think it might even be a 45 if I remember right. You will not, by the way, you're only going to have the calculator on the first couple questions, and then we're taking the calculators away. Okay? So you'll do the calculator part of the test, raise your hand, I'm going to grab your calculator, and then you do the rest of the test. The numbers aren't that bad, so you should be able to do the numbers without a calculator. Okay? All right, so I'm doing the first one divided by all of those, right? So 1, 1/2, 1/3, 1/4, 1/6, 1/12. Then I'm going to do 3 divided by all of them. So 3, 3/2. What's 3 divided by 3? 1, which is already on the list. 3/4. What's 3/6 reduced to? 1/2's already on the list. What's 3/12 reduced to? 1/4, right? 3/12 is 1/4, so that's already on the list. All right, now I'm going to do the 9. So I've got 9, 9/2. What's 9/3? 3, that's already on the list. 9/4. Oh, it is 9/4, doesn't reduce. 9/6 does, though. What does that reduce to? 3/2, which I have, and then 9/12 reduces to 3/4, which I already have. So now looking at your list, which of the following are possible rationals? So is -9 okay? Yes. Is 3/4 okay? Yeah. Is 12 okay? No. Okay. Is -9/4 okay? Yeah, what about 2/3? No. So it would have been A, B, and D. All right. So that's where I'm stopping because that's as many people as we had. 7? Okay. Those of you that get a pick, make sure you have one in mind when I get to you, okay? So kind of keep track of what we've done and which one you still need to see, okay? So find a polynomial function with the given 0. So I'm going to start by setting these all equal to x. So basically I'm reversing zero product property and all of that, okay? I'm going to write it as a product of linear pairs. So I'm going to move this one. I'm going to move them all over. I'm not going to set them equal to 0. I'm just going to go ahead and go for the product. So x, what do I do? How do I move the 1? Subtract it. How do we move this negative square root of 5? Add it. How do I move the square root of 5? Subtract it. Good. Notice the back two are what? What do we call those? They have a special name. They're conjugates of each other. So do I need to do all of FOIL? First and last only. Okay, so the nice thing we did too on this test, remember how this whole unit we were doing these multiply a 3 by 3 thing? None of that on the test. Okay, I'm going to see that on your performance task, aren't I? I don't need to see it on your test. All right, so most of them get down to a binomial times a binomial. All right, so it's actually kind of nice. All right, so what's x times x? X squared. Square root of 5 times negative square root of 5.
Negative square root of 25. Or negative 5.
Negative, if we just take the shortcut it, what's underneath the radical, right? You're now down to a binomial times a binomial, so what do we need to do? FOIL. Could I do this? Is that okay? Yeah, if you like that, you don't have to FOIL. Do this. Remember, foiling is just a way to multiply. Make sure you're using the distributive property correctly. Okay? You basically have to multiply this by everything in the other one. Okay? That's what it's talking about. All right, so what's x times x squared? Good. X times negative 5. Negative 1 times x squared. Good. Negative 1 times negative 5. 5. Good. Is your answer, if it was multiple choice, necessarily in that order? No. Is this okay if it's not multiple choice? Absolutely. Okay. So this is probably what it would look like multiple choice, but this is a perfectly good answer. I can't mark that wrong. All right. Let's see. Jimmy, what do you have? Or what would you like to see? 15? All right, we need to write the complex number in standard form. So again, standard form just means put the I in the back. When I see a negative under a radical, we pluck our i's out, and the square root of 16 is 4. And then that's the last one, and the class gets to pick 2 from here. Okay? All right, what do we need to do with this negative sign? Distribute it. So negative 4i minus 2 minus 6i. Negative 2 I'm going to write in front. Remember, standard form means write I in the back. Negative 4i and negative 6i is what? Negative 10i. All right. You guys get to pick 2 more as a class. So what else would we like to see? That we haven't done yet. Nothing. Number 10. Okay, so I'm going to come back to those that I've skipped, so please be thinking about which one you want to see. Okay? The class is counting on you. All right, I need to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate of the denominator. What is the conjugate of the denominator? 1 plus 4i. All right, so on the top, I'm going to distribute in. So I get 3 plus what? 12i, good. In the bottom, I need to just do first and last, so it's 1 times 1. Negative 4i times positive 4i. Negative 16i squared, better known as 16. So you get 3 plus 12i over... That might not be the way they do the answer, though. They're probably going to do the answer like that. Do you see the big difference? We split up the fraction. Ruby, what's wrong?
I put that in as the answer and it marked me wrong.
It's possible. So if it does mark you wrong and it's one where you have to type it in, I would go back in and assign points. I'm not going to do that on the practice test. Okay? If either I typed it wrong when I did the answers, but it should show you what I typed as the answer, right?
Oh no,
3 plus 12y in parentheses? Did you put 3 plus 12y in parentheses?
Yeah, you had to put it in parentheses. You should be able to go back in and see the answers.
I put 3 over 17 plus 2.
Yeah, and I may have put parentheses around that or done something goofy.
Okay.
Typically, if there's a fraction that I'm putting in, I'll put parentheses around it automatically when I type in an answer. Okay? All right. Samia, what do you want to say? I think there were 2 of these on there, right? One of them was the positives, one of them was the negatives. I'll tell you what, I'll give you both of them on this one. Okay, so I'll do them both. You're only going to see one or the other on the test. Okay, which one's harder? Isn't the negative one harder? So likely it'll probably be the negative one. All right, we're going to choose all that apply. We're going to do the positives. We just list the signs the way it is, right? So what's my first sign? Negative. Then what's my second sign? Positive, then negative, then and positive. So how many times does the sign change? 3. And then I have to subtract 2. So it's either 3 or... So you'd have to do B and D. When you type the answer, do that. No spaces. Okay? I don't care if it's capital or lowercase, but it'll mark it correctly if you don't put spaces in it. If you do put spaces and commas, I'll go back and check it, but it'll be quicker for me if you just don't put the spaces in. All right, I said I'd do 12 too, right? Because it's kind of the same problem. The number of negatives, what do I have? I have to sub in negatives, right? And what we learned was if it's an even exponent, we keep the sign. If it's an odd exponent, what do we do? Change it. Okay, so even exponent, keep it. Odd exponent, what do I do? Change it. Even exponent I, keep it. Odd exponent I, change it. And then I keep the last one. So how many on this one?
1.
Only 1 sign change. You guys, don't assume that on the test that it's going to be exactly the same answers as the study guide. It probably won't be. So actually do the problems. Okay? Don't just try to memorize the answers from the study guide. All right. Let's see. Maria, what would you like to see? We did 14.
Yeah.
What else?
13.
13. Okay, long division. Hey, good one to pick. If it's... This one will be open-ended. You have to show me your work. If you do not do it by long division and you do it by synthetic, even if you get it right, you get no points. Okay? So you need to know how to do long division. Believe it or not, my second year calculus class, we were doing long division this week. Okay? So you do have to know how to do it. All right? We do use it. All right? So inside, I'm going to put x cubed. What do I need to put in also? 0x squared, and there will be a missing one like that on the test, so be ready for it, okay? Minus 2x plus 5, and then I'm going to put x minus 3 on the outside. Okay, how many times does x divide x cubed? X squared. I'm going to distribute, so I get x cubed and minus what? 3x squared. What do we do to the signs? Flip them. So those are gone. What's 0x squared and 3x squared? Good. I'm going to drop down both of these. So minus 2x plus 5. How many times does x go into 3x squared? Good. We're going to distribute. So 3x times x is? Good. 3x times negative 3 is? Good. What are we going to do now? Flip the sign. That's gone. What's negative 2x and positive 9x? 7x, and I'm dropping down a 5. How many times does x go into 7x? 7. I'm distributing, so 7 times x and 7 times negative 3. What do we do to the signs? Flip them, so what's your remainder? 26. And you guys, on this one, it's going to give you a space to type it in. If you don't type it in, it's okay. On this particular one, I can look at it from your paper, okay? It will give you the auto grade on it, I think, but I will always go back and check those, okay? Because I know that we don't always type them in exactly the way I do it. All right, Koba, which one do you want to see? 21. Okay, what's wrong?
Quick question. If we use long division but then use synthetic division to check our work...
Absolutely. I was going to bring that up. Thank you. Can you use synthetic to check it? Absolutely. That's okay. And really what I would check, that means I'm starting by setting it equal to 0. Okay? What is your greatest common factor there? X. So I'm pulling that out. What is left behind? All right, what property do we need to use now? Zero product property. All right, so this one is one of the zeros. How do I move that 11? Subtract it. How do we undo the squared? Square root, what do we write in front? Plus or minus, you got x equals plus or minus. When I see a negative under a radical, what do? Pluck your eyes out, square root of 11. You could write it like that. You could do this, you just have to make sure that the radical is not over the I. That's why I like that way better. Okay? All right, Abel, what do you want to see? Okay, so find a polynomial of lowest degree that has these zeros and whose leading coefficient is 1. I set them all equal to x, but remember we learned something about the imaginaries. If I have 2i, what do I also have? Negative 2i. So I'm going to set them up as linear pairs, okay? X is just going to stay x. How do I move the 3 over? Add it. It's a negative 3. We would add it, okay? How do I move the 2i over? Subtract it. How do I move this 2i over? Add it. All right, we're going to work in pairs here. This I distribute. It only gets distributed over one set of parentheses. So we get x what? Squared plus 3x. The back, what's special about the back? Conjugates. So what do I multiply together? First and last only. So what's x times x? Good. Negative 2i times positive 2i. Negative 4i squared, which is better known as 4. Right? Okay, I'm going to FOIL what I've got there. So what's x squared times x squared? Good. X squared times 4.
4x squared.
Good. 3x times x squared. 3x cubed. 3x times 4. Good. Is that okay? Is it likely to see that multiple choice? No. It's likely to be like this multiple choice. But if it is multiple choice, other than you showing some work, right? Am I going to look at your work in detail on a multiple choice question? I'm not. I'm going to look to see that you did it, right? Because I give you bonus points for putting it on to show me work. So if you could recognize that these two are just going to switch spots, you don't need to necessarily need to waste time writing the extra line. Okay? What's wrong? The negative 2i? Because one of the things we learned is that these got the i's come in pairs. Okay, it's one of the theorems we learned. So if you have a positive, you also get a negative one. All right, if you have a negative one, you also get the positive one. Okay. All right. Let's see. Who's next? Austin, what do you want to see? Yeah. Corey, what do you want to see? 16? Okay. So this one right here, we've got Joey. It says that he took this and he factored it correctly as this, which means we have x minus 8 times x plus 2 times x plus 3. I don't even need to worry about this first part here. It already gave it to us factored. That was nice. Based on that result, Joey said that the graph of the polynomial will have these zeros. So the zeros were negative 8, 0, 0, 2, and 0, 3. That's what Joey thinks. We're supposed to decide what's really going on. Let's find the actual zeros, okay, and see if Joey's right. So I'm going to set each one of these equal to 0 by the zero product property. So what's this 0 right here? 8, technically 8, 0. Okay, what's this one right here? Negative 2, 0. And what's this last one right here? Negative 3, 0. Again, this is an SBAC-like question. Okay, so that's why we've done it this way. So, let's read the answers. Yes, Joey identified the zeros correctly. Did he do them right? No, so that one's out. No, Joey should have set each binomial factor equal to 0 and then solved for x to determine the zeros. Does that one look right?
Yeah.
Possibly. Let's keep going to make sure. No, Joey should only have positive values. Is that true? No. Okay. No, Joey should have written the zeros as 0, negative 8. Is that right? No, it's even further wrong. So it's got to be this one here. The no, Joey should have set each one equal to 0. Okay? All right. Adriana, which one do you want to see? Well, pretty soon we're going to run out of people, guys. Okay? Bryce, which one do you want to see?
How about number 10?
See?
17.
17. All right. Is this a factor? So I'm going to go ahead and use synthetic division. And what if it is a factor? What am I looking for my remainder to be? 0. Okay, and look I have two choices. Either it's got to be 0 or it's not 0. But what am I going to put in the box? Negative 1. So look I only want the ones that put in a negative 1. So it's got to be one of these two. It's probably not going to work, but we need to decide which one is going to happen here. Either that or I have a typo. All right, so what are my coefficients on that function?
1, negative 7,
16. All right, drop down the 1. Negative 1 times 1 is? Negative 7 and negative 1 is? Negative 1 times negative 8 is? 8. Negative 10 and 8 is? Negative 2. Negative 1 times negative 2 is? 2. Is your remainder 0? No. So we would say no because this guy here does not equal 0. We almost didn't need to do it, right? Once I found the negative 1, we knew if it was no, it had to not equal 0, right? And this one said it did equal 0. All right, Destin, which one do you want to see? 14. 18. All right. Where does the graph cross the x-axis? X-axis is the same as zeros. Okay. So I'm going to set the whole thing equal to 0. What? Okay, so it looks kind of strange, doesn't it? But it's a trinomial, isn't it?
Yep.
So when we have a trinomial, what do? Magic x, right? So two numbers that multiply to negative 4 and add to 3.
4 and negative 1.
Good. All right, so we've got, I'm going to go right to 0 product. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to set this one up. So I have a 4 in the back and a negative 1 in the back. Remember, whatever's in the middle is what goes in front. So if it's an x, you put an x in front. If it's an x squared, you put an x squared in front. Because remember, how many answers should I have on this thing? 4 answers. Okay? Now do 0 product property. All right, what are we going to do to move that 4? Subtract it. How do we undo the squared? Square root. What do we write in front? Good. So x equals plus or minus. See a negative, pluck out the I. Square root of 4 is? Look at your answers. Does it want non-real, or actually, isn't imaginary going to cross an x-axis? No, typically you have some crossing, and then the imaginaries are these guys, or if it's flipped upside down, the ones below. So we can't really see imaginary roots. So everything with a 2 would get crossed out, wouldn't it? I don't even need to finish it, do I? I'm going to, but I don't need to. All right, so I got to move the 1 over, take the square root, plus or minus. So the where it's going to cross the x-axis would be plus or minus 1. All right. We have to describe the right and the left-hand behavior of the graph, and we're supposed to choose all that apply. We have an even exponent. An even exponent means that we are either both pointing up or both pointing down. Because it's positive in front, we know that they're both going to point up. So it doesn't matter what goes on in between here, this is what the end behavior looks like. So on the left-hand side, we would say that the left-hand side rises. And on the right-hand side, we would say that it also rises. So we would type AB or BA, no spaces. Let's pretend that it said something like negative x cubed plus 7x. If it was something like this, then it's an odd exponent, which means they point opposite directions. All right. It's negative, so that means it falls like a negative sloped line. So it would look something, whatever it is in there, okay? So in this case, it would, on the left-hand side, it is rising, and on the right-hand side, it is falling. $20. Let's look at 20. All right, 20 is a good one. So 20 is a little bit strange. On here, on the computer, you actually have to drag these things in there, right? Hopefully you practice that on the practice test, okay? And it's going to be the same way on the actual test. It may reverse the it may not grade it well with this, so I will go back and grade this one. So don't panic if it marks it wrong. I will go back in and look at the work, okay? Because I had to attach these to a specific one of these, and I may have attached it to the wrong one, okay, for you. All right, to get zeros, I better set this equal to 0. All right, greatest common factor. X squared. All right, so I am left with x squared minus x minus 20 still equal to 0. What do we have to do with this piece? Magic x. So two numbers that multiply to negative 20 and add to negative 1. Negative 5 and negative... Positive 4. Okay, so we've got x squared. I'm going to go right to zero product property. X squared equals 0. X minus 5 equals 0. X plus 4 equals 0. What are we going to do to undo the squared? Square root. So x equals 0 has multiplicity what? 2. So the multiplicity 2 would have been choice D. Okay. All right, how do I move the 5? Add it, and this one has multiplicity 1. All right, so that one would maybe be this one. So let's see, and that was positive 5, so A. Could A have been this one? Could they have gotten... Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like I said, I will go back in and regrade those by hand. X equals negative 4, and that one again has multiplicity 1, so it could possibly be here, or it could be CA. That would be okay too. All right. All right. One more is a class. What else do you guys want to see? Check is I would just check. If that remainder came out the same, you probably did it right. Okay. All right. 21. Is that right, Koba? Yeah. All right. All right. Sketch a graph of the polynomial function that's third degree, 3 real zeros, and a positive leading coefficient. All right. 3 real zeros. 1, 2, 3 on the graph, right? Yeah. Third degree, even or odd? Odd, so they're pointing the same way or opposite ways? Opposite, and then if it's a positive leading coefficient, we know it has to look like a positive sloped line. So then you know so that arrow is going to go up or down, and that one's going to go up. So 1, 2, 3 zeros. Okay.
How would we,
What?
how would we answer that?
That would be the graph. You sketch it. Actually, I think this one's going to be multiple choice.
Oh.
So I think I give you the graph, and you have to describe the graph.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah. So just because I gave it to you open-ended on here doesn't mean it's going to be that way on the test. What if I said instead of that, what if I said you had 4 real zeros, or fourth degree with 4 real zeros and a negative leading coefficient? So 4 zeros, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Is it even or odd degree? Even. So does it point opposite or the same? Same. Is it going to point up or down? Down because it's negative. So you'd be looking for something like that. Okay? I missed my zeros, but you get the idea. Okay? It still works. All right, let's see. Cody, you needed one. Which one? Okay, so 22 and 23 I'm going to do together. All right? So that's your bonus question right there. Okay? Austin picked well. There's something tricky about these. And again, these are SBAC-like questions. All right? I'm showing them to you. I know geometry did a whole bunch of them last year. Okay? I show them to you kind of before we take a test, and then I put them on your test. If you're a sophomore, you take this test as a junior, you're going to be sitting in AP Calc next year, right? We're not preparing for the SBAC. We're preparing for the AP test. So this is your year that you're getting prepared for this. Okay? I expect all the kids in AP Calc to score really well on the SBAC, okay? All right. So we've got this guy right here. Notice, in the instructions is where the function is, okay? It tells us that's a soccer ball. You can use that quadratic function. Y represents the height of the ball. X represents the horizontal distance the ball traveled, okay? Assume that the x-axis represents the ground, so your x-axis is the ground. Okay. How far did the soccer ball travel horizontally in the air? Okay, so this is a really weird question. Okay, so pay attention because I'm showing you how to do the weird question. You know how to do it, it adds one little thing. If I'm going to try to find, I want to know what my zeros are basically. Okay, and I want to know the distance between my zeros. That's what it's asking you to do. It's weird, right? So I'm going to take what I've got there and I'm going to set it equal to 0. So this is the 22 or the part A. Okay. So, is it a negative in front of that x squared? I can't see it. Yes? Okay, so negative x squared plus 12x minus 32 equals 0. I'm leading with a negative. What do I need to do with it? Divide it. So it's going to basically swap all the signs and go away. So we've got negative 12x plus 32 equals 0. That's a problem we know how to do. We've been doing that since day 2 of this class. What do you have to do with it? Magic x. So two numbers that multiply to 32 and add to negative 12. Negative 8 and negative 4. Good. So we have x minus 8 equals 0 and x minus 4 equals 0. So what are the two zeros? Okay. Now, that means that 4 and 8 was the horizontal distance it traveled, right? So what do you think I have to do to get how far it traveled in between them?
Subtract 8.
You're going to subtract the numbers. So 8, isn't that silly? I mean, how easy was it to subtract the numbers? But it's really difficult from the way they phrased the question. But you now have seen it. You should be prepared to see that on the test tomorrow. I guarantee 100% that that's there. Yes, Abel?
So we would just type in 4.
You would just put in 4. Yep. That makes sense? Okay. All right. So factor it, subtract the numbers, put in the 4. Okay. Now let's read part B. Part B is way easier than it looks. Okay. This here is exactly the same as what they gave me, right? The only thing they added was this extra piece here. What is or are the complex zeros of this new equation? Well, technically these two are zeros. You could put them in there. If you put them in there, I wouldn't mark it wrong. It may automatically mark it wrong, but I wouldn't. If you didn't have those, I wouldn't be that upset. All you're going to do is take this last piece, set it equal to 0. Because isn't that the piece that changed? Yeah, that's all they added to it. So we've already done zero product property on the first half over here. Let's do the zero product property on this half. So we've got negative 25. How do we undo this squared? Square root, what do we write in front? Plus or minus. So x equals plus or minus 5i. Do you see how that added the complex part to it with the I?
Wait, why did it not?
What's wrong?
Why is it not?
Why is it a...
We subtracted 25.
Yep. All right, everybody good with that one? Okay. It was... Adriana, what do you want to see? 9. Okay.